April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. Has any of you ever heard of Chernobyl before? I haven't either, until recently. I watched a docu-series on Amazon called Chernobyl, and it really made me interested in learning more about what happened there and sharing it with you. This is a picture on my first slide of the Chernobyl nuclear plant prior to the explosion in 1986. On that fateful afternoon, the staff of the nuclear plant was running their annual safety check. Because of negligence on their part, a fire started in reactor number 4, which caused the core to explode, sending radioactive contamination into the surrounding countryside and villages. All people within the 30-kilometer exclusion zone were evacuated due to radiation contamination. The Ukrainian government announced worldwide that the 30 kilometers surrounding the Chernobyl reactor was the most dangerous place on Earth. In the days to follow the explosion, all citizens of nearby villages, cities, and towns were evacuated to avoid serious health risk and death. All were forced out of their homes and bused to neighboring countries. They had to leave their homes, their household belongings, their pets, their farm animals, never to be seen again. Radiation contamination causes a lot of physical and mental health side effects. There was many firefighters, police officers, and miners, not to mention the plant workers, that were directly contaminated during the explosion. Most of these people died days to weeks after because of acute radiological contamination syndrome. What happened to most of them was their bone marrow depleted inside their own body because of the nuclear energy, which caused infection in the body, sepsis, and ultimately death. A lot of the women from Chernobyl were pregnant at the time of the explosion, and almost all of their babies suffered consequences because of this. In this first slide, there is a boy who looks young, but because of his exposure to cesium-137, which is a chemical that's inside of nuclear power, he's actually 15 years old and was born with a birth defect that makes him look like a toddler for his entire life. In this slide, this toddler girl was born with hydrocephaly, which is excess fluid surrounding the brain, which causes an enlargement of the skull like you see in this picture. It puts pressure on the brain and can leave her paralyzed for her entire life. Many of the Chernobyl children were born with congenital heart disease, leaving all of them exposed to open heart surgery at birth. Many adults from Chernobyl also developed heart disease after the contamination from the nuclear radiation. One of the biggest side effects of it is the dramatic increase, almost 100-time-fold, of thyroid cancer. Many people thought back then that you could take iodine pills to prevent thyroid cancer, but the vast majority of people contaminated developed cancer at some point in their life and died from it. People weren't the only ones contaminated in Chernobyl. Like I mentioned before, the domesticated home pets and farm animals, as well as wild animals, were contaminated as well. The difference is, though, is that animals are not contaminated due to air pollution. They don't breathe it in like humans do. They ingest it into their body through soil and groundwater contamination, as well as animals that they feed on in the environment. Many of the domesticated animals were shot and killed by the government officials and the military that moved through to clean up the area after the explosion. But there were many wild animals and some farm animals left after all that had babies and continued the genetic mutations up until today's time. This photograph shows a calf that was born with two heads, which is one of the genetic mutations caused by nuclear energy. In today's world, there's constant threats and talk about nuclear war, nuclear bombs, and the development of nuclear weapons, and it's a scary thought. After seeing this, you can imagine the lifelong effects that nuclear radiation can have on people. I'm hoping after listening to me today, it kind of sparked some curiosity to learn more. There's so much more information out there on what happened at Chernobyl. Movies, docu-series, books, science, and everything backing up the serious contamination that happened there. You can even travel to the Ukraine now and visit Chernobyl without the risk of high contamination levels. Thank you for listening to me today, and I hope you learned something new. Thank you.